Christine Brown always presented herself as the tough one, the woman who had the courage to leave Kody, the wife who told her truth when others remained quiet, the mother who refused to let her heart break her. Viewers loved her independence, her kindness, her strength, but behind that rock-solid smile and the self-assured voice that usually cut through family melodrama, there was a secret Christine never intended anyone to discover. A secret so exposed, so vulnerable, that when she finally uttered it aloud, it left fans speechless. She wasn't merely battling for independence from a failing marriage. She was battling for her life. The cameras never captured it, the tabloids never speculated about it, and even the other wives never dreamed. It started quietly, after a surgery that had left Christine writhing in pain. Physicians gave her a bottle of prescription pills, a quick fix, something that dozens of patients receive every single day. And initially, it was innocuous. Just one pill here, one pill there, making the recovery period smoother. But relief turned into something else in a hurry. Christine was relying on those pills not only for the pain in her body, but for the hurt in her heart. Each harsh word from Kody, each time she saw him lavish his love on Robyn and ignore her very presence, each financial struggle and Coyote past dispute, it all sent her running for the bottle. She didn't intend to. She didn't want to. But every night, she knew the pills quieted the noise, soothed the hurt, dulled the emptiness, and so, bit by bit, she relied on them more. To the world outside, Christine shone, radiant with her own newfound liberty, as she drew back from Kody's domination. On social media, she beamed with her children, cooked at home, and revealed fans her joy. But behind closed doors in her own home, when cameras ceased to roll and lights faded away, there were evenings when she looked at that prescription bottle, with a combination of shame and desperation, and asked herself how on earth she had arrived here. She said to herself that she could quit whenever she wished. She said to herself it was temporary, just until life became easier. But deep inside, Christine knew something was changing. She no longer felt like she was making her own decisions. And the worst part? No one noticed. Not Janelle, not Meri, and not even her children. Her secret was secure, and that security made the spiral all the more manageable. Christine's mask was perfect. Her ringing laughter at family gatherings, her quick wit that kept Kody in line, and her presence reminded everyone why they always made her the fan favorite. However, behind closed doors, she was tormented by one fear. What if the truth finally came out? Would her children ever look at her the same way again? Would the fans who hailed her as inspiring turn in on her? Would Kody make it ammunition to destroy what was left of her dignity? For months, Christine had this weight, and each day it became more and more oppressive. Until one evening, when it almost took her out entirely. After a grueling, exhausting day of shooting, she crept into her room, drained and spent, and grabbed more pills than she ever had before. The minutes flew by. The room spun, and for one awful instant, Christine's world went dark. When she opened her eyes once more, fear took over. What if her daughter had come in? What if this was the end of her life? What if her secret had become a tragedy? The shame was too much, but so was the truth. Christine knew she stood on the edge of a cliff, and if she didn't move back, there would be no return. It changed everything that moment. It didn't remove the craving. It didn't remove the fear. It sowed a seed of determination, though. Christine knew she couldn't hide any longer. Not from her loved ones, not from the fans who had faith in her resilience, and not from herself. She reached out for the first time to find help, speaking her truth in a whisper to a counselor who vowed to lead her to recovery. And now, after all these years of silence, Christine is finally going to let the world in on her secret. Her admission is raw and unfiltered, and heartbreakingly human. It's not about shame, it's about survival. It's not about weakness, it's about strength. But the question remains, what will this disclosure mean for the Brown family? For the fans who worshipped her? For the legacy of Sister Wives itself? Christine has opened a door that cannot be shut, and on the other side is a truth that might change forever the way we view her. And the family we believed we knew. Christine was always the wife others underrated. Since the very first days of Sister Wives, when the cameras trailed the Brown family into their dysfunctional universe of plural marriage, she was the one who walked in quiet humor, boundless warmth, and an abiding love for her children. Her fans referred to her as the heart of the family, the one who made it all seem tangible, earthy, even hopeful. But what Christine bore within was not hope. It was delicate, dangerous, and buried under smothering layers of smiles that even the people who knew her best wouldn't risk confronting. It all started innocently, as so many tales of dependency do, with a surgery and a bottle of pills. Doctors prescribed oxycodone for Christine to ease her post-operative pain. Initially, she took them precisely as instructed. A pill here, a pill there, just enough to erase the ache and enable her to sleep at night. But Christine immediately realized something else. The pill did not merely erase the ache in her body, it erased the ache in her heart. It eased the nagging pain of being invisible in her marriage, the gnawing sense that Kody no longer cared for her as he had, the quiet shame of seeing Robyn take all his affection and the rest of them eating the leftovers. That initial insight was both relief and curse. Christine reminded herself that she was strong enough to contain it. She reminded herself she had suffered much worse in her marriage, endured heartbreak and isolation, raised her children through sheer chaos. What was a single pill at night to calm her mind? But over time she found herself wanting the silence the pills provided. The family drama was just background noise when the medication numbed her feelings. The tension of financial wars, the endless arguments about Coyote Pass, the pressure of keeping up the act that she didn't notice Kody's preferential treatment. All that dissolved for a few hours, and Christine found herself grabbing that reprieve increasingly frequently. The peculiar thing was that she was able to conceal it so easily. Christine was always the happy one, the one who could make a snide comment at Kody's expense, the one who could stand strong in front of the cameras without blanching. That image became her armor. No one suspected that beneath the big smile, her addiction to oxycodone was increasing its hold. Janelle thought Christine was exhausted from the constant tension in the family. Meri assumed her short temper was stress. Even her children, although at times they did pick up on her moodiness, credited her explanation that she was just really tired. But the fractures were appearing in small things. Christine was snapping at little things, losing patience that she used to have infinite amounts of. On some evenings, her laugh when the family was together seemed to be forced, brittle, poised on the brink of something darker. She started to avoid long conversations, heading back to her room earlier, where the silence of the pills provided her with comfort she couldn't otherwise get. And yet, despite her efforts to reassure herself she was in charge, Christine knew that she wasn't. She could sense it in the way her brain started counting down the days until her next pill, in the agitated worrying that ate away at her when the bottle was nearly empty. She reminded herself she only needed them to sleep, but before long, she was grabbing them during the day, just to survive the constant waves of stress that characterized her life. The family drama only multiplied her dependence. Kody's increasing remoteness was no longer subtle. It was a tempest. Christine had to weather every single day, every mean comment, every withering look, every overt display of affection for Robyn eroded Christine's soul. And with every blow, the pills became her bandage, a quick fix for a pain that seemed endless. Her children, the one constant in her life, were her lifeline, but even they could not completely protect her from the spiral. Sometimes she felt overwhelming guilt when she looked at their faces, knowing they deserved a mother who was alive, who was present. And then the shame would be another excuse to grab the pills. It was a vicious cycle. Pain to pills, pills to guilt, guilt to pain. What made it sting was how invisible it all was to everyone around her. On television, Christine glowed. People on the internet praised her for being brave, admired her for being strong and independent, applauded her for finally standing up to Kody. They noticed the smile, the defiance, the strength, and they believed it. No one noticed the nights she sat on her bed, head in hands, tears running silently down her cheeks as she took another pill, praying it would keep the storm at bay just a little bit longer. She existed in two spheres, one in which she was the favorite of the fans, the tough mother, the free-thinking wife, who would not let Kody's deception define her, and another in which she was bound by a cycle of deception and subservience, afraid that one day reality would come pouring out. Christine started questioning for how long she would be able to maintain the equilibrium, for how long until someone saw the emptiness in her eyes, for how long until one of her kids rang her doorbell at the wrong time, for how long until the cameras, unforgiving in their search for drama, inadvertently took a glance at her reality. The burden of those queries weighed on her every day, and the greater the weight, the more she relied. Christine no longer merely needed the pills. She required the deceit, the illusion, the mask she had honed with years of practice. But she knew that the mask would not last. Something was brewing, something that would rip the facade wide apart and compel her to confront the truth she had struggled so fiercely to entomb. And that truth, when it eventually emerged, would not only shake Christine's world, it would shake the Brown family and fans who believed they knew her best. Christine believed that she could manage it. That was the lie that she told herself each morning when she took a gander in her medicine cabinet. One pill to stabilize her, one pill to dull the edge, one pill to stand up to Kody, Robyn, and the relentless stress that lived in every nook of their broken family. She lied to herself that she wasn't addicted. She was just managing. She was getting by. Surviving had a price tag though. The more she relied on the pills, the more difficult it was to maintain the scales of balance. There were times when her body appeared to turn against her. The chronic fatigue, the muzzy memory, the manner in which she tripped over words when she talked. Christine attributed it all to stress. But her children were not blind. Truly, though still young, and yet more perceptive than Christine was aware, started asking why mom was always so exhausted. Peden picked up on how often she left the room. The older girls gossiped about it when they thought she wasn't listening. They sensed something was off, but none of them dared to believe their mother. The glue that held the family together was falling apart. And then the slips. Small errors Christine couldn't conceal. A missed appointment, a dinner half-cooked and burned because she lost time. A discussion with Janelle she couldn't recall the next morning. Janelle glossed it over with pity, thinking Christine was just tired from the family battles that never seemed to end. But Christine knew inside, these weren't mistakes, they were symptoms. Symptoms of a spiral she could no longer contain. The worst was the way the pills started to alter her. Christine took pride in being strong, being able to laugh even in despair. But gradually the laughter disappeared. She grew short-tempered, snapping at her children over things that never irritated her before. She retreated, closing off into herself, slamming doors that once stayed open. Her warmth, the same quality that made fans adore her, was fading piece by piece. The turning point occurred one night in Flagstaff. Cameras had just wrapped up a dramatic scene with Kody, where he again made light of her emotions in front of the group. Christine smiled it off, even threw in one of her snarky jabs that later got cheered on social media. But as soon as the crew broke down, she barricaded herself in her room. Her hands trembled as she grabbed the bottle. She did not even bother to count this time. She simply had to get rid of the pain, all of it. Hours later she awoke with the sound of Truly at the door knocking. Christine's heart plunged when she realized she had fallen asleep on the floor, the bottle open at her side. She grabbed it, shoving it under a chair before she opened the door. A forced smile plastered on her face, as Truly asked if she were all right. That moment would haunt her. For the first time, Christine saw the fear in her daughter's eyes, and it almost shattered her. But still, the cycle persisted. She needed to quit. Oh, how she needed to quit. But every effort was futile. The withdrawals were horrific. Cold sweats, frantic thoughts, the suffocating anxiety that left her gasping as though drowning. Without the medication, the aching of her body intensified. But worse was the ache within her heart. The hollowness she'd stuffed beneath years of Kody's indifference came thundering back, more biting than ever. And then there was the guilt. Christine was the wife who at last broke free, the one who discovered her independence, who empowered hundreds of thousands of fans by walking away from Kody and by choosing herself. But in secret, she felt like a phony. What type of role model wrestles with a hidden addiction? What type of mother stashes pills in dresser drawers and bathroom cabinets? The shame crushed her, but the outside world was none the wiser. The cameras continued to roll, the plots continued to thicken, and Christine acted her role like a professional. Her fans admired her bravery, hailed her as strong, while Christine took another pill just to get through the day. But secrets have a way of surfacing eventually, and Christine's was creeping more and more to the surface. The first actual fright was when Janelle dropped by unannounced. Christine had forgotten that she vowed to assist her with some paperwork. Janelle entered and Christine was pale, dizzy, having trouble even concentrating on what Janelle was talking about. Alarm spread across Janelle's face, but Christine waved it off, attributing it to a migraine. Nonetheless, Janelle felt uneasy. Something was not right. And then there was Kody. For all his cluelessness about Christine's feelings, even he was starting to notice her backing away in ways he hadn't witnessed before. She wasn't just remote, she was gone, detached. He was accusing her of checking out, not caring about the family any longer. Christine, still in her haze, lashed back at him with a venom she hardly knew she possessed. Their battle that evening was so intense that even the children moved to their bedrooms in stunned silence. It was in the darkness after that battle, alone in the shadows, that Christine came to face a horrifying reality at last. She wasn't just dulling her hurt now, she was evaporating into it. Bit by bit, the woman she once was, the tough, resilient, witty Christine, was being consumed whole by the addiction she promised herself she could handle. And she knew eventually, the truth would surface. Whether she came clean herself, or someone found out by chance, the secret she kept was a time bomb. And when it went off, it wouldn't simply transform Christine's life. It would transform the whole story of the Brown family, revealing a side of their tale nobody was ready for. Christine had persuaded herself she still had time. Time to get her act together. Time to taper off before anyone was any the wiser. Time to maintain her image, to be the tough mother, the fan favorite, the one who'd left Kody and discovered her independence. But time was expiring quicker than she could manage, and the walls that held her painstakingly constructed facade were crumbling. It began with whispers at home. Peden, watchful and direct, accosted his sisters. He didn't approve of what he saw. The sleep-deprived eyes, the odd mood swings, the way Christine would occasionally disappear into her bedroom for hours. "Mom's not all right," he said bluntly, his voice weighed down by concern. The girls resisted, not willing to accept it, but deep inside themselves, they knew Peden was correct. Something was amiss. Janelle couldn't shake off the disquiet too. She replayed that day over and over in her head. Christine, pale and shivering, struggling to comprehend a straightforward conversation. It ate at her. Janelle had always been Christine's best friend, the one person who comprehended her suffering. But this was something else. She started popping in more frequently, showing up unexpectedly with flimsy excuses, dropping off takeout, inquiring about the children, anything to monitor her. And Christine always played along, wearing her best smile, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. But one night, Janelle surprised her. She came in as Christine was stuffing a tiny orange bottle into her pocket. Their eyes met. For a fleeting instant, Christine was motionless. Then, with a strained laugh, she said it was lingering medication from her operation. Janelle didn't prod, but her doubt became heavier, and Christine felt it like a blockage on her chest. The actual threat, however, was not from her family but from the cameras. Christine continued to film, continued to be a part of the running saga that was consumed every week by fans. She had always been quick on her feet in interviews, with zingers for responses, her presence illuminating the television screen. Of late, however, editors started to catch inconsistencies, slurred words, vacant stares, pauses that could not be justified. The production team quietly flagged it, wondering if Christine was simply exhausted, or if something more was happening. And then came the night that shattered everything. It was to be a relaxed family dinner, one of those few nights when the cameras weren't there. Christine wanted it to be normal, like the good old days, despite the fact that nothing in their lives was normal anymore. But midway through, while she walked with a dish to the table, her hands shook so hard that the plate fell and broke on the floor. The ringing was heard through the room, and everyone gazed at her, truly hurrying to assist. But Christine's face was white, her breathing labored. For a split second, she seemed like she would fall over. The children looked at each other nervously, and Janelle stood there stunned, the pieces of the puzzle falling together in her head at last. Christine made some excuse about dizziness and rushed away, but no one at that table believed her. Later that evening, sitting alone in her room, the guilt overwhelmed her. The truth was wriggling to the surface, and she could no longer hold it back. Every fib, every excuse, every secret bottle, it all fell apart. She pressed her hands over her face, quietly crying, afraid of what would become of her if the world discovered the truth. Would her children despise her? Would the public shun her? Would her struggle to become independent be reduced to no more than yet another scandal linked to the Brown name? The weight was unbearable. She thought about confessing. She rehearsed it in her mind, how she would sit the kids down, how she would look Janelle in the eyes, how she would finally admit the words she could barely whisper to herself. "I'm addicted." But every time she imagined saying it aloud, fear silenced her. And yet the pills beckoned to her. They offered relief, escape, one more night of peace. She detested them, but she wouldn't let them go. It was in that vulnerable position that Christine erred, one that would drive her secret nearer revelation than it had ever previously been. She neglected to conceal the bottle, truly searching for a hairbrush in her mother's drawer, discovered it. A small orange bottle, with an incomprehensible label, but one that she knew from commercials on television. She spun it between her small hands, her eyebrows creased. It was that revelation that sowed a seed. Truly didn't realize what it was yet, but she knew it must be significant. And when she quietly presented it to one of her sisters, things started rolling. The children began to connect dots, whispering in the dead of night, attempting to make sense of what was taking place with their mother. Christine didn't know yet, but the truth was no longer hers to keep. It was slipping away from her, seeping into her family like a secret too big to keep. And as the darkness stretched across the floor, Christine knew that sooner or later, someone was going to call her out. The question wasn't whether anymore. It was when. And when the time finally arrived, all she'd been struggling to defend, her children's trust, her reputation, her autonomy, would be held in the balance. The house was silent, but the room was charged with tension. Christine sat on the couch, mindlessly scrolling through her phone, but not really looking at anything on the screen. Her hands shook. She had doubled her dose that afternoon, attempting to soothe her nerves, but instead she felt empty, detached almost from herself. She believed she was alone in the living room, but Janelle stepped into the doorway, her eyes keen and scanning. "Christine," Janelle stated softly, as though not wanting to startle her. "We need to talk." Christine smiled, the same smile she'd been flashing for months, the one that said "I'm fine," but Janelle wasn't believing it anymore. She drew in close, her tone tougher. "I saw the bottle, Christine. I know." The words struck Christine like a slap. Her throat constricted, her initial reaction to deny, deflect, to spin another lie. But the force of Janelle's look pressed her down. Her chest convulsed, and before she knew it, the tears began to flow. She struggled to keep them back, but once they flowed, there was no containing them. Janelle hastened across the room and sat down next to her. "You don't have to do this by yourself," she breathed. Christine shook her head vigorously, her sobs welling up into gasps. "You don't understand," she managed to get out through choking tears. "If the kids learn about it, if the world learns about it, they'll know me as weak, as a failure." "I can't." "You're not weak," Janelle interrupted, her tone firm now. "You're hurting, and you need help." The words hurt because they were the truth. Christine fell into Janelle's arms, shaking, whispering, "I didn't mean to let it go this far. It was just to make me heal. And now, I don't even know who I am without it." What neither of them knew was that they weren't by themselves. Waiting in the hallway, out of sight, were three of Christine's children. They had overheard it all. The muffled sobs, the mention of the bottle, the revelation Christine had worked so hard to keep hidden. Their wide eyes locked in silence, and with no word, they comprehended. Their mother's secret was true. Later that evening, Christine discovered them in the kitchen. Their faces were white, their expressions wary, truly too young to fully grasp. Simply asked, "Mom, are you ill?" The naivety in her voice broke Christine's heart. She collapsed into a chair, her weight bowed by shame. She ached to lie, to defend them, but the burden of dishonesty was suffocating. With shaking fingers, she agreed. "Yes, baby, Mommy's been ill. I've been taking medication that I shouldn't have had for too long." The room went quiet. One of her older daughters averted her eyes, tears brimming, and Peden worked his jaw, fury dancing in his eyes, not at his mother, but at the circumstances, at Kody, at all that had driven her here. Christine steeled herself for rejection, for the revulsion she anticipated would erupt. But instead, her children began to gather around her, each one putting a hand on her shoulder, her back, her arms. The love was not diminished, unbroken, but now it was tempered by fear. The fear that their mother would slide further away, if she did not devise a means of climbing out. Still, the confrontation left scars. Trust was fragile. The kids whispered about it behind closed doors, unsure how to process what they'd learned. Janelle kept checking on Christine, gently pushing her toward treatment, toward honesty, while Christine wrestled with her demons, one day stronger, the next day slipping. But there was someone else who couldn't be kept in the dark forever: Kody. When he at last heard the whispers, when a child slipped up in frustration, his response was explosive. Addicted? He spat, his tone thick with disgust. Of course she is. She's always been weak, always seeking an escape. Christine's blood simmered at his words. Weak? After all these years of shouldering his disregard, after raising children, while he pursued Robyn, after keeping a family together by duct tape and prayer? Weak? No. She was fractured. Yes, but not weak. Their battle that evening rattled the walls. Kody accused her of using Christine's confession as another means of turning the children against him. Christine shot back, her anger raw in her voice, labeling him the cause of her having found herself in the downward spiral to begin with. The children listened from their bedrooms, their trust in their father disintegrating piece by piece, as his words sliced deeper than Christine's tears ever had. The fight had left the family estranged more than ever before. But Christine did not know one thing now. There was no going back. The cat was out of the bag. The battle lines were drawn. And for the first time, she knew that this was not only about survival any longer. It was about taking back her life, her health and her dignity, even if it meant burning every bridge to Kody's life on the ground. The days that followed were oppressive with silence. Christine went through her house like a ghost, burdened by the fact that her secret was no longer her own to keep. Her children, once free in her company, now regarded her with wary eyes. They wanted to believe her when she told them she was improving, that she was trying, but trust didn't come back in a day. Each time she disappeared into her room, they wondered. Each time she went for her purse, they gasped. Janelle hung back, her unassuming strength a lifeline. She produced brochures, phone numbers, even sat with Christine as she weighed whether to call a treatment center. But it took more guts than Christine ever thought possible to make the call. To put in that number was to acknowledge finally that she had lost control. Kody told the tale his own way. To him, Christine's confession was grist. In impassioned arguments with the older children, he characterized her as irresponsible, reckless, unfitness. He preached to anyone who would hear it that she was dramatizing her so-called addiction in search of pity. But what he said did not stick the way he intended. The children had heard it in their mother's eyes, felt it in the shake of her voice, and for most of them Kody's cruelty only proved what they already knew. He was not there to look out for Christine, and never had been. For Christine, the true fight started in the quiet hours. At night, after everyone was asleep, she'd lie awake with her eyes fixed on the ceiling, resisting the temptation to slide back into the pill's comfort. Her body cried out for it, her mind pleaded for it, but her heart told her of Truly's big round innocent eyes looking up and saying, "Mom, are you sick?" That image became her reminder. One night, after yet another charged argument with Kody, Christine called her children to the living room. Her hands trembled as she spoke, but her words rang with a resolve they hadn't heard in months. "I'm not going to hide anymore," she said. "I'm seeking help. Not for myself, but for all of us. I want to be the mother you all deserve. I want to be myself again." The air was thick with emotion. Tears streamed down faces, hugs were given, and for the first time in what could only be ages, there was hope. Fragile, shaking hope, but hope still. Christine grabbed the phone the following morning and dialed the number. Her voice trembled as she called the counselor, and admitted what she'd been avoiding. And although her chest felt heavy with fear, she was lighter. The most difficult step was taken, but it was done. Nevertheless, the path forward wasn't easy. Whispers started circulating amongst fan communities online. A family insider had leaked rumors of Christine's battle, and soon the news caught fire. Publications speculated, commenters analyzed, and Christine's strong, capable ex-wife image was suddenly attacked. Others defended her candor. Others shredded her, saying it was a sympathy or attention grab. Christine skirted the headlines, but she sensed the tempest gathering. The showrunners phoned, insisting on an answer, demanding to know if she would face it on television. Christine hesitated. Did she truly want the world to witness her most vulnerable? Or was this her moment to reclaim her narrative, to demonstrate that even in her fragmentation she was not vanquished? The question hung there, dense and unanswered. One evening, alone on the back porch, Christine hugged her journal, the only place she could vent her rawest truths. She wrote of her shame, of her pain, of her little triumphs. She wrote about the children, about Janelle, about the desolation that Kody's absence left, and the odd relief it brought as well. And then she penned one sentence that she underlined 3 times. "This is not the end of me." She cried onto the paper, blurring the writing, but she refused to stop. For the first time in months, she could feel the faint flicker of something she had convinced herself she'd never get back again, herself. But even as Christine began her journey toward healing, the world outside was drawing in. The production team demanded answers. The fans demanded the truth. The media sensed blood. Christine knew the toughest fights weren't over yet. They were just ahead. And as the screen darkens on Christine's quivering but resolute face, one ghostly question is left to the audience. Will she emerge from this scandal stronger than ever? Or will the gravity of addiction, betrayal, and public scorn weigh her down for good?